Okay, we're at the soldering area now, and I'm going to kind of walk you guys through it. We do have 4 spots to solder, but because of the social distancing, we've got X's at the spots where students can use them. So we're down to only 2. That's also a reason why I am offering the tab settings for the stone setting too, just because of the limited amount of time students have in the studio to work. Now, when you come to solder, it's very important that you have your hair pulled back if you have long hair. Also, safety goggles. And this is a little bit different because we didn't have to do this with the heat patinas. You need ventilation going. So on the wall here, you can see this first set. It says welding hood exhaust, and it's going to be loud. That's the vents right here above, each station. So you just hit the green button, and you can hear the vents are on. So you know, definitely have to turn on the ventilation and have your hair pulled back and safety goggles. I'm going to keep those off for the demos because they are very loud. Next, you want to always make sure you have your spots set up before you start. So your bowl should have water in it. If it doesn't, fill it up at the sink. You should have your tweezers and your soldering pick, your solder, your items that you're going to be working on. Make sure the flux is nice and a paste consistency. If it's dried up, just add a little water and stir it to a paste consistency. Next, we use acetylene gas for soldering. When I'm here during class dates, I will turn on the tanks and have those ready for students. When you guys come to open lab, the parapro will, if you ask her, she will turn the tanks on. But it's pretty simple. On the top of each tank, you see this little key over here too, which will only be the end ones, but the key at the top. This opens the valve and lets, you just do a quarter turn, very slight turn, you don't have to do a lot. This allows the gas to come from the tank into the hose. The only time the gas will come out of the end is if you're ready to light it and you turn on the gas and light it. So everything's safe, it's just now open from the tank. Now I'm gonna get the camera placed up here again so I can show you guys some soldering. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's see again, yep. Okay, so changing the torch tip on the tanks. Just kind of peek and make sure, hold it down a little bit lower. Okay, so you can see this is the torch tip. Right here, if you're soldering, always check and make sure you have the right torch tip size on before you start. So to change it, you just twist this and it just comes unscrewed, it keeps twisting. Once it's unthreaded, you're fine. Grab low and just kind of twist and pull. That way you can put on a new torch tip. That's the right size. So push it all the way down, then just finger tighten. You don't have to really tighten that down so the next person has trouble changing it. You just need it like finger tightened. So now you have a different size torch tip. So it's very important to do that, to know how to do it, and always grab low. You don't know if it's just been used, so never grab at the top, grab at the bottom. Okay, when you're lighting a torch, back on, you always make sure that we have We have little torch lighters, little electric ones. So you turn it on the bottom, and you can hear it, little spark right there. That makes it so much easier than these type of strikers. They really kind of kill your hands. So these are really nice. So I'm going to set it here so you guys can see. So when you go to light a gas torch, it's kind of like if you've ever been camping and trying to light one of those little gas stoves. If you have the gas up too high, it kind of poof, and it like puts itself out. Same thing with lighting these torches. I always put it to my ear because the ventilation's so loud, and you just want a little hiss coming out. See, I had it up too much. It blew itself out. So just a little hiss. There we go. And then you can adjust it off. I didn't mean to do that. You can adjust it. Hold on. It's been a while since I've used this setup here at campus. Little hiss. Come on. There we go. Got to put it to my ear. There. And then you can adjust the flame. Let me move that out of the way so I can adjust the flame properly so you can see. There we go. And you can adjust the flame there to the right, to, you know, how high, if you're doing something bigger, or, you know, you can vary the degree of heat that you're going to be using. Now this is how your torch flame should look. You should always have this nice blue cone. We work from like here out with the heat. The hottest point is going to be at the tip of that blue cone. You never mash the blue cone when you're soldering. You're just wasting time and gas. You always work from the tip out. If you need the piece hotter, move it closer to the blue cone. See how the brick gets hotter? And then whenever I move away, it's not. So you can see kind of how it varies. And when any tool that's been used while soldering and are in the flame, always make sure you quench it so the next person won't get hurt. When you go to shut off your torch, just turn it clockwise, very slow, and you can I can change it. It's not hot down here, so if I'm ready to solder something different, I grab it low and lay that aside. We don't ever quench the torch tips. Then put a new one on. This is one of the smaller ones, torch. There, you can see it's like a little tinier flame for smaller pieces. Shut that off. Okay, so the difference in the torch tips we have a few different sizes that we use the most of. Now these, they look the same, and be careful, your bricks will be hot. That's what they're used for. They're fire bricks. They help keep the heat in your piece, so they are hot. So always be cautious when you come to solder. Gentle, quick touches. I always flip my brick over when I'm done soldering, so I know it's going to be safe for the next person. It's kind of a courteous. Now these are our two smallest torch tips. You think that they're the same, but if you look at the ends, one hole's smaller than the other. So at the bottom, this one's a 0, and then this one's a 00. So this is the smallest that we have. Those are good for soldering bezels, little tiny pieces. And then we have, this is a 1. This is probably the torch tip you'll use the most of. And then this is a 2. We also have 3s and 4s. Torch tips are all in the tool closet in a drawer labeled torch tips. So we do have 2 bigger ones after this, but they generally don't get used as much because it's more for larger pieces. But those are our torch tip sizes. Okay, now I want to show you guys the edge to side. Let me just peek in the camera and see which is the best angle so you can see the little nice line of silver. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so always put your flux down where you're gonna solder, and this will keep that area clean. You'll understand a little bit more what I'm talking about once you see it actually happening. Now, depending on what size your piece is, that determines how many pieces of solder you're gonna use. So I just am gonna space it out. I'm gonna use 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna use 5 pieces. I'm gonna place them, space them all out along there. Just gonna use medium, just because that's what I'll end up having a lot of leftover medium, it seems like, in my studio. Always make sure your setup has a brick in back to help keep the heat in. It's really important. It makes soldering go a lot faster, because remember, the piece needs to be equally hot, and concentrate on the solder seam that you want to flow. So I'm gonna use a 1, the torch tip. Now I'm right-handed, but I like to have the torch in my left hand, so my right hand is free to maneuver the pieces of solder, place the pieces of solder. I can solder this way too, but I prefer this way, and that's why I always have the gas on and off switch on this side. It's so if I need to shut the gas off quickly, I just can reach over and boom, clockwise shut it off. If you are the other way, like if you like using the torch this way, just switch it, so then boom, you can shut this down quickly if you need to. You don't really ever want it on top. That's awkward, or especially not like in the back. That's really awkward, you know, bending your arm around here to shut the gas off. So make sure you pick which side, how you want to hold the torch. So this is a number 1 torch tip. Before I lay the pieces of solder on, I'm gonna gently heat it up a bit. This is just because there's water in the paste flux, and it tends to bubble. It'll bubble while the water is evaporating, and this way I can kind of eliminate that bubbling where my solder is gonna be jumping everywhere, and then I'll place it in there. And again, remember, safety goggles, hair pulled back, and ventilation on. Oh, I keep going the wrong way. My torch setup in my studio is the opposite. So I'm having some finicky time here with the... All right, I think my torch tip might be a little bit dirty. I might have to switch it. Give me 1 second. Sometimes if you find that things just aren't looking quite right or working quite right, it could be the torch tips, especially if the flame doesn't come out with the nice blue cone. They do get dirty. Yeah, see, this one's a lot. See, it's this torch tip. I'm gonna set it aside. I think it needs to be cleaned. Okay, so just gonna kind of gently heat the piece. You can see it's bubbling. And don't heat it too much. You don't want to burn your flux off, or your solder won't go. So now I'm just gonna kind of pull the heat away so I can lay my pieces of solder in, and then I'll move them into place with the soldering pick. Always use the soldering pick when moving your solder. A lot of people, they tend to use the tweezers, which ends bad because they end up soldering the tweezers together, and that's kind of a pain to correct. So while I'm heating it, I'm gonna just kind of slightly move my pieces of solder into place up against that back ledge. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of maneuver the heat. I'm heating low. Okay, now I'm gonna concentrate down low. And I should be able to pull the solder all the way along. There, you can see that bright, shiny little seam. Okay, so this shows, quench that. So you can see where my flux was at. It kept that area nice and clean, and then the other area is where it oxidized from the air hitting it without the flux. But you can see that is your edge to side soldering. And after we do all these, we'll talk about the pickle. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the sweat soldering. Now, solder is also, it's pretty incredible stuff. If for some reason I wanted to remove, yeah, you can still see, remove this piece I just soldered, all I would have to do was reflux it and heat it and kind of hold this with the tweezers and it would fall off. I could remove that. So you can reflow solder. That's why we use the typing whiteout, you know, to protect repeated seams. You don't want them to reflow and move and fall over. So this process kind of shows an example of that, excuse me. So on the back of my smaller piece, I'm gonna melt just a bunch of pieces of solder all over the back of it. And then I'm going to place it, flip it, place it onto my other piece that I want to solder it to. And what's it gonna do is it's gonna reflow the solder that's here and solder them together, sweat soldering. It's better and it's cleaner and easier than if these were laying on top of, you know, where I wanted them, laying together, and I tried to put little pieces of solder all the way around the edge, and I'm trying to pull it underneath. It's gonna bleed out everywhere. It's just gonna be a mess to like sand and clean up. Now I can go ahead and pre-put on my solder because it doesn't matter if it jumps around because it's all in the back of this piece. I'm just gonna plop a bunch of pieces on there because it's gonna be right on the back. It doesn't matter if I put it on now or. Okay. All right. Whoops, that's way too much. Okay. Yeah, they jump around a little bit, but have your soldering pick in case they want to jump off the side. There, you can see the solder's all. Now I don't want to quench it because it just cools the piece down. So I'm just gonna go ahead and flip it. Excuse me. Okay, so now I'm gonna heat. I'm really gonna concentrate on the back piece. If I just concentrate on the top, the brass, it's just gonna reflow to itself because I'm getting it the hottest. I'm not getting the bottom piece hotter. I want it to flow to that one. So just kind of around the edges, and you should see a little line come around the edges. There we go. Excuse me, I'm gonna have to get a drink of water. Okay, so quench that, and again you can see that in between soldering your piece gets all oxidized and dirty, but that's what the pickle is going to fix. I'm going to pause for 1 second.